to lucid dream and try to trip in my dreams. I love to fly around. I just love to do anything that I could possibly think of. And I love to do things that define this reality in dreams.
Beauty is supernatural.
Yeah.
It is supernatural. Her beauty is supernatural, and it sends a message to us.
Planetary Tantra is a path of interactive magic with Gaia Sophia, an intimate way to engage the supernatural powers of the divine feminine. Welcome to a new episode of Grok the Talk, and this really is a new direction as it commemorates the launching of a series of talks with John Lash on Planetary Tantra. We have timed these talks with the full moon, then with the new moon, again with the full moon, new moon, and we'll just keep going in this cycle until John has told me that enough is enough and the fat lady has sung. We're going to go very slowly into things. There's no sound bites here. We're going to take as much time as is needed. So please download these files every time you hear that one is uploaded and savor them for the amount of incredible information that John is going to bring through for us. So John, let's go ahead and jump into things. And I'm very happy to welcome you to this first Planetary Tantra talk.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
And how are things in Spain today?
Oh, cool and sunny. Quite lovely. Perfectly blue sky.
Are you getting hints of spring there?
Yes, indeed. Flowers are starting to come out. Feels like the first tendrils of spring are emerging.
Well, that's how it feels here in Japan. It's today was the first day I actually had a feeling that spring has come. So it's a very wonderful feeling and kind of appropriate that this is where we start our talks.
Yes, that would be true.
And, we do have a couple of loose ends, you might say, from the first interview. So let's go ahead and get those out of the way and kind of get those on record. The first thing I want to go into is this mysterious thing that happened with the abyss in our first interview. I was asking John about Tokugawa Ieyasu and his opinions on this shogun when he came back with a question about Carlos Castaneda, whether I had read the books or not. And this proceeded into using the kind of magic that you read about in the Castaneda books, where John put his arm around my shoulder, I put my arm around his shoulder, and together we jumped into the abyss. And I must tell you that in clockwise, it was probably a minute or a minute and a half happening. During that apparent time, my mind was completely blank. It was completely silent, but I was cognizant of what John was saying the whole time. I just didn't have any feeling of needing to respond to anything. And I joked with my wife later that if she had come into the room, I have a feeling that she would have just seen, a pair of headphones just floating in the air in front of a microphone. Anyway, I was called back to this reality, in a sense, shortly thereafter. And after this, I had sent after the interview, I had sent a message to John, saying, we did jump into the abyss. This really happened, right? And for 5 days, I got no response. And I was on pins and needles wondering what is going on. And finally, John responded with a response, very simply said, yes, we did. And this incredible wave of relief, for whatever reason, flowed out of me. John, do you have any thoughts or any comments on what happened that day?
Sure. I think it's quite appropriate that the subject or the name of Carlos Castaneda would come up at this point in our dialogue, just at the point of starting to talk about planetary tantra. And as you say, we'll continue to do these talks on the new and full moons with a kind of rhythm until something tells us to do something else. There's a lot that can be said, and Castaneda's work is a prelude to planetary tantra, as I've mentioned a couple of times, I think. You could consider that Castaneda was the warm-up act for planetary tantra. I want to put it in those terms. His syntax of sorcery and magic is, of course, very intriguing, and many of the things that Castaneda introduced can be practiced and have been practiced by the generation of people who lived with his books from the late 60s onward. The experience of jumping into the abyss, if I were to translate it into layman's terms, as it were, it really means just a leap of the imagination. You and I took a leap of imagination together. But the trick is, it's not just that. It's not just a metaphor. The experience that happens when we do that is that we allow a part of the total energy of our being and of our awareness to stream out to another place in the universe. And this is how we move to the next phase of imagination that we're going to live from. We stream out a part of our conscious energy and intention to that place. This is what happens. And so there is a real energetic factor that comes into play when you jump into the abyss. That is, if you're a real sorcerer and if you're connected with the forces of the earth, which give a boost to your intention. So it's not merely a metaphor, it is an actual act which you can feel. It is very close to the sensation of a bilocation act, and the continuing effects of it are discernible and detectable. So it's one of the great pleasures of sorcery to do that, and you and I did it at that moment in a completely spontaneous way, which happens to be the optimal way to do it as well.
Did you have as I was talking, did you have a feeling that this is kind of the chance to grab and to take advantage of that opportunity, or was this something that you just found yourself saying in that sense?
No, I didn't just find myself saying it. The opportunity to jump into the abyss is offered by the Nahual itself, by the unknown. You just have to be observant and vigilant so that you pay attention to the moment when that opportunity arises. And that's what I was doing at that moment. You cued it in a certain way by bringing up this topic. And then I lent my intention to doing it, and off we went.
Now, could you say in a sense that that is a moving of the assemblage point?
Not exactly. Technically, it isn't. But it's kind of a preview of the moving of the assemblage point. As I say, it's a partition of a part of your being, a streaming away of part of your intention and your life force, actually.